Hey, and welcome back for episode 20 of Cultivating Courage. What a milestone.
Wow. Wow, already 20 episodes. It's I guess it's been a little over a year now, hasn't it? But it feels like it's gone quickly too.
Yeah,
Nice one to
fast and
hit.
slow, fast and slow
Hmm.
in a lot of different ways. And yeah, it's kind of been emblematic of a lot of what I feel is my own journey of like, sometimes it feels like everything has shifted and sometimes it feels like nothing has changed. And there's been a
Mm.
cyclical way that in these 20 conversations we've had that it sometimes feels like we're recycling the conversation, but just from a maybe from a different vantage point or through different lens and different experiences. And I think today I'm bringing in something that we've probably explored in some ways before in this forum, but not in this exact way. So I'm excited to play with you, and I'll set the table here. I have been in my spousal relationship, in my relationship with my wife. I think the more inner work that I've been doing, the more I'm getting in touch with my desires and my wants and my deep desire for intimacy and connection and love is it's something that I'm doing this dance with that in some ways I feel like I have this hungry ghost within me. That's one of the parts that I have been paying a lot of attention to. I've got this hungry ghost who wants like all of Ari's attention and wants to have really deep conversations and to know all of her inner experience and to share all of my inner experience and just really loves what it is to be seen and to see. And I think
Mm.
maybe one of the shadow sides of this hungry ghost part, if I have a visual, it's like it's got its like arms all the way spread out and it like wants to smother.
Mm.
In this case, Ari is like the projection screen in which I smother. And when it feels like there's some sort of disconnect between me and her, a lot of my guards come up and there could be blaming and finger pointing of like you're on your phone too much and you don't pay enough attention to me. And something that I've been really grappling with is how do I allow this yearning to be here, like really honor that I do want this intimacy without smothering Ari, really, without smothering her in the relationship. And I think there's other players maybe if as we get to the deeper into the conversation, there's other things that are showing up for me, but it's really been alive for me the last few weeks. And like, how can I be there for Ari? I want to be like supporting, loving husband who's honoring her needs and her wants. And sometimes she doesn't want the same things as me, but also standing for this hungry ghost yearning and longing within me.
Mm. Mm. Wow, beautiful. I love how you put the words around that, Mike, because I think it's something that so many of us experience, but we don't necessarily know how to name it. And I'm curious because you've done, I think, a beautiful job of defining like that one part, which is maybe doing the smothering, like feeling the want, feeling the desire, the yearning, whatever language you want to use. But I'm curious, what are the other like real players in this game? I mean, if we look maybe a little bit through that internal family systems lens, are you aware of what other parts might be there?
I thought you'd never ask. Yes, the other players feel very seen, and thank you for asking. One of them, so I have a, there's a few. I think the first player that comes in a lot is I call him my teacher's pet. And
Mm-hmm.
he's really savvy and he's really smart and he hooks onto concepts really well. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of times I can identify what's happening within me and my teacher's pet wants to like move quickly through it. He's got the like, I know the answer, I know what to do here vibe.
Is he
And
the one I'm
what
talking to now, by the way?
mm, no, I
No?
wouldn't say so. I think that
Okay.
I have this like kind of dropped in distance right now, and
Mm.
I'm speaking from capital M Mike, I think, but maybe
Okay.
you can push me on that if uh yeah, I love this part of me, and I think
Mm.
that the way that I catch on to concepts and integrate them in my life is largely attributed to this part, my teacher's pet. And one of the things that happens with teacher's pet is that I kind of brush through the moment instead of actually really dropping in and feeling it all the way through to completion.
Mm.
So one of the things that happens is, let's just say there's a moment where I'm wanting to make contact with Ari, and it's not reciprocated, or it's not meeting the expectation that the hungry ghost in me has.
Mhm.
The teacher's pet might jump in and say something like, "Oh, like this is the part where you reveal yourself and like and say what you're wanting, and say like reveal the story that you're making up about the situation." And I think that's great, but what really helps me even more is when I drop in to feel it all the way through, like allow that ache and that yearning that's not being met in that moment to really be there. Because I think maybe another part to presence in this moment is that I have there's two. Which do I want to share first? I have one part that is like, you've got it good, Mike. Why are you uh ruffling feathers and like trying to go deeper all the time? Like you've got a great relationship, you've got a really good life, and you're always like chasing depth and more, and like, why do you need to do that?
Mm.
And then I think the fourth player is, there's the part of me that starts to finger point at Ari and say, you need to start doing more inner work. You need to get off your phone. You do this. You do this.
Mhm.
Uh, which is one of the ways that my defenses are up, is when I am not just owning what my experience is and
Mm.
saying, you need to meet my needs. I'm doing,
Mhm.
there's like a level of resentment, I guess, in there too, of like,
Yeah.
I'm here for you so much, and like I do this, and like I take out the garbage and I go get you a smoothie, and
Mm.
uh yeah, those are, I think those are like that's the full party that is there with
Mm.
my intimacy. There might be more, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, nice to meet all these parts of Mike, these different players, these different personalities, and I really again want to acknowledge your awareness over these things and the different ways that they might interact. And maybe also just a side note for the people watching, it tends to be that we do sort of unconsciously know that these parts exist, and that there is a dialogue between them, which can sometimes cause some friction, right? But we generally don't know what's going on, which is why this body of work, internal family systems, can be so powerful, right? Because we can start separating those characters and understanding a little bit more, rather than it just being chaos, like things don't make sense. You know, I feel this, but I also feel this, and it doesn't comprehend. But this allows us to really see that there's different stories playing out at one time. And this is like all inside of Mike, right?
mhm,
And then we've got all these different characters playing out inside of Ari. And we can't know what's happening there, right? Unless we ask. And even then, so I think it sets the stage for this beautiful kind of performance. And then we start to see a little bit the complexity of relationships,
mhm.
of why they are such a fertile personal development ground, let's say.
Yes.
Mm,
Mhm.
mm. Yeah, so I'm curious which part like feels important for you to look at a little bit more deeply and get some more understanding of, in terms of what's showing up for you lately.
Mm. It seems to be the hungry ghost, that longing,
Mm-hmm.
that I have a love-hate relationship with this part.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, it's like my favorite thing about myself is
Mm-hmm.
just like how much I want to love and see and be intimate. And uh, in other ways, it's like, we need to relax, Mike. Like, it's okay to uh, it's okay to like not feel like you're in full lockstep all
Mm.
the time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that the part that I want to pay attention to right now is like, can I make space for this longing without making it like a bad thing?
Yeah. Yeah. And to what extent is it important for you to consider how that part is also sort of met and reciprocated?
Mm. One way I know how to answer this question is that there's an embodiment piece to a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the inner work that I do. And I know what's possible when I actually allow. I kind of see both tracks going a lot of times. So the one track is that I don't make space for the yearning, and
Mhm.
then uh my guards come up and I start finger pointing, and then I also do the same with myself, and start questioning things.
Mm.
Track two is I allow the yearning to be here and like maybe close my eyes and really breathe with it. And a lot of times I feel it in my gut and in my heart. And there's a guarded way that I can even feel in my posture right now that I was like slouching
Mm.
a little bit and not really breathing with it. So if I breathe with this sensation, this longing that I feel in my heart and in my gut, and like I feel it sometimes in my throat and behind my eyes too. I know that if I just stay present with it without trying to do anything or shift it or change it, that it becomes a more kind of settled, grounded desire
Mhm.
for intimacy, not like Ari, like you need to love me, but more a more tender like I love you so much, and I'm feeling a little bit disconnected, and I just wanted to share that with you and reveal that. There's
Mm.
the quality of that. There's the way that I'm saying it. If I actually allow it to fully be here and like move through my body,
Mhm.
that is I'm speaking from a much different place than when I'm trying to yank something or have some sort of agenda. It's just me sharing my experience when that happens.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful. Yeah, I, do you mind if I just sort of connect something a little bit intuitively and tell me if I'm going in the wrong
Don't
direction
mind.
here?
Go for
But
it.
it seems like this the energy of this part, this what you call the hungry ghost, it seems that it's quite a like a big energy, and it's maybe got a bit of forward momentum. It's sort of wanting to sort of go out and sort of make something happen. But that this other part that you mentioned, which is a little bit more like, oh, you should be grateful for what you have. You've got a good
Yeah.
relationship. It's almost like that's a little bit of counter part. Like it balance the energy a little bit. Like you've got the accelerator, which is the hungry ghost, and maybe
Mm,
the brake, which is the part that's like, no, Mike, settle down and be grateful.
mm,
But what you spoke about just then in terms of this kind of allowing that wanting, that hungry ghost feeling to just settle in your body and sort of be open and available, it's sort of it's almost like you're, but by making space for that, you're not requiring that breaking mechanism anymore, and you're actually becoming available for that
yes.
intimacy.
It's so yes, it's a great observation. And it's really interesting that, and this is why I find IFS and parts work, all the variations of it so profound, is that almost invariably, the other parts see that they're getting their needs met also when I allow. So in this example, if I allow my hungry ghost to really like be fully seen all the way through, that he's getting his needs met and doesn't need anything else more, the part of me that's telling me I should be grateful, and the part of me that wants the finger point, and all the other parts of me that might show up, they all have more access to what they're wanting too. Like I actually just do
Mm.
feel more gratitude for what I have.
Yeah.
And uh so that there's a beautiful synthesis and integration that
Mm.
seems to happen where the parts go, oh, if we like, I have needs. This I'm speaking from like maybe the part of me that is my teacher's pet. Like I have needs, but they also get met when a hungry ghost gets his needs met. And the
Mm.
finger pointer, like, he's getting his needs met, and we can all get our needs met together. And what a beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, because by really making space for that, maybe that one sort of dominant feeling that can come up sometimes, yeah, it does seem to have that settling effect on the other. Like the teacher's pet's got more of this doing energy, like
Mhm.
I have to do this so I get that, and
Yeah.
the finger pointers like it's a little bit more this transactional thing. So it's like I deserve this because I did that, sort of a little
Yeah.
bit more righteous, but by
Mhm.
just making that space, it seems to disarm those a little bit, because it's
Mhm.
just allowing. Is that really that energy of allowing, which is to me that's sort of like dropping the attachments.
Yes.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. I think it's a really really interesting symphony how they all play out together. And I'm curious, just as we're sort of going back and forwards in the dialogue here, if there is anything that's sort of coming up and really present for you now here in this moment.
Well, I'm just noticing that when we hit record, and even before we hit record, there was the tenderness, like that energy was there that wanted to be expressed. And I feel
Mm,
really seen right now, and just allowing that energy to be here. Um, I feel a little bit of a shift in my energy, that instead of it feeling like I'm kind of cowering over my heart and blocking my heart and blocking my gut, that energy is now free to move through me all the way. And I feel more
mm,
grounded, and more present, and more centered. And I think that's what I was speaking to when I allow it to be in my body. A lot of times in a really good coaching session, where I kind of make direct eye contact with the feelings I'm having, or the wound, or the pain that I'm experiencing, eventually I come to this kind of in my body, it feels like there's an opening in me. Like, I'm kind of
mm,
demonstrating that on camera right now, that
mm,
uh if you've ever seen Shawshank Redemption, when Tim Robbins gets out of Shawshank, he's like in the rain, and he kind of like rips his clothes off, and he just like looks up to the
mm,
sky, and has like that open, like, life is like totally
mm.
available, and oh my god, like all the possibilities are here. And
Yeah.
so an observation I can make about that is that my teacher's pet a lot of times, like, wants to jump right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Teacher's
Yeah.
pet's like, I know what's possible if I feel
Mm,
all these things. So I like, let's just skip the feeling, but like, let's go all the way there. And he's really savvy and smart. And I have to go, I know, but like, we'll get there if we don't try and change what we're feeling right now. Let's just allow it to be here. And you've
mm,
given me the gift of exploring what's been here with me. So I
mm.
guess what I'm noticing is that I feel more energetic and alive, more
Yeah.
vitality.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting what you said there, just as you're talking through. A couple of things really stood out for me. And I think first of all, when we started this conversation talking about intimacy in the context of you, or whoever else, which is both with you and another person, right? Especially in a romantic relationship. But what we seem to actually be talking about is almost like the intimacy which is taking place inside of you.
Yes.
It's like the more that we can reduce the friction between those parts and get them to be working together, to be working a little bit more intimately, the more available you are. You use that word yourself. I think it's a beautiful word, but the more available you are for that external intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's quite often the big confusion in relationships, is we think it's more about what's happening with the other person, and it's really easy to ignore what's going on inside. So like there's friction out here, so let me like work out here and try and get that sorted out. But
Yeah.
it's not always the most effective way of operating.
Mm.
And the other thing, because you named it also in terms of the opening of the body, I'm curious if you've ever done any work like and sometimes it's hard to catch it in the moment, but if you've ever done any sort of reverse engineering of when you know that you're
Yes.
feeling closed, actually just physically opening your body and going, okay, let's see what that does to the biochemistry. Have you played with that at all?
Well, there's something I say to myself a lot is if I want to, I want to be careful with the language here, but this is the way I shorthand it is if I want to change my mind, change my body.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, yes, there's like the Jordan Peterson, if you just stand up straight, then that already has a certain level of command to it. And I do reverse engineer sometimes. I actually just, I shared something on my LinkedIn the other day about power posing for public speaking. And yeah, if we put our, it's one of those things that I don't like fake it till you make it, but sometimes if you just smile for like 15 seconds, your body like your brain patterns start to catch up to it.
Mm.
And there's a whole interesting dance there too, because that I can really latch onto that as something that is used as a bypass, for example, where
Yeah.
it's like I'm
Yeah.
actually just not, I'm avoiding the feeling that I want to
Mm-hmm.
feel or that I am needing to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's still a really powerful mechanism, especially in the context of sometimes, like I don't, if I'm not in a space where I am safe to like cry or
Mm.
really just allow whatever's in me to like go all the way there. Taking on a posture can help like really shift everything on pretty much on a dime in a lot of
Mm.
instances.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There
Yeah.
was
I
something
think,
else.
no,
No,
you
sorry.
go.
Okay. There was something else that I had my finger on that I think could be really helpful. Yeah. So a lot of times, whatever the thing is that I'm projecting onto Ari, it's like what you said. It's actually the self intimacy and the self love, and I think that this is actually really powerful. Like when you talk about self compassion and self love and unconditional love, there's a way that it feels gooey and uh, like soft, or I don't know what the word would be, but this feels actually really practical of allowing, if I can allow, again, to invoke that word, all these different parts that I might find annoying in air quotes,
Mm.
and just allow them to be there, it fosters a lot of self-love. And what it also does is if I'm noticing that we all have different personalities that we have a tough time getting along with, and if I
Mm.
can make space for all of me, because I think we all are so many multitudes and we all have parts of us that like don't shut up and are annoying and want to like take up the full airtime of a meeting. We all have parts that we think are passive, too quiet, too whatever. If we
Mm.
can actually embrace all of that within us, then we are actually more open to all the different ways that they might show up in other people as well. And this has really helped me
Mm.
expand my capacity as a coach and someone who has empathy and compassion for myself and for other people.
Mm.
Where when I first started coaching, there were all sorts of qualities that drove me nuts, where it felt like I needed to change them. And I think the
Yeah.
greatest gift that we can give as a space holder, whether it's with ourselves or for others, is to just allow it to be there, allow whatever is there to be there, that there's some value to it.
Mm. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that you say that. And when I was doing a little bit of study in this area of internal family systems, somebody used the analogy that sometimes our parts are like a bunch of kind of school children, and they're all kind of different age, and you know how productive it would be if you started just going and just being critical of these children and telling them how bad they are, right? If you're really dealing with a bunch of children. So I think if we can kind of internalize that a little bit and go, okay, well, maybe that's not the way that we're going to get all these kids to kind of work together, right?
Yes.
We need to find a way to bring them onto that same page and acknowledge their different personalities and their characters and what they have to bring to the table. And some of them might misbehave a little bit, but it doesn't make them bad. Again,
Yeah.
to use those air quotes. But
And
yeah.
interestingly, in internal family systems, a lot of times our parts emerge from different childhood wounds. So in a
Mm.
lot of cases, they actually are a lot of my parts that are the most scared or repressed or hidden are, say, 8 to 16-year-old versions of me that, like in a lot of ways, I've learned that being a man and being a boy, you don't, don't just like plop your heart on the table for someone else to
Mm,
maybe take away or rip it up. And I'm not like, I've got different stories about being gentle. And
mhm,
so there's, yeah, a lot. I think I love that you are bringing in the children example, because literally our parts, my parts a lot of times, and our parts, I know from studying the work, a lot of times they are children who are stuck within us, that
mm.
they don't need to be yanked around, they don't need to be told what to do, they just need to be seen, they need to be accepted for
Mm.
who they are.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and massive credit to you, Mike, for the work that you're doing and for your willingness to talk about this. Because I work with mainly men in my practice as well, and it's a topic that's been on the table so much lately. Like this experience of just having so much love to give
Mhm.
within that heart, but there's just all these things that come over the top. And quite often it can show up as things like anger, which can be really
Mhm.
confusing. It's like, how do you
Mhm.
reconcile anger with I've got a whole lot of love to give
Mhm.
in all of these really confusing contexts that people find themselves in through life. So I think it's just such a beautiful display that you've given today of how okay, there is this big beautiful use a sort of gooey heart, right? It's just wanting to be loved, and sometimes I can feel a little needy, but and the hungry ghost expression, to me, I think that's something that can never be sort of satiated, right? It's like it's
Yes.
always more, and that's really lovely, but then there's all these other parts as well that kind of sit next to that. And I think like anyone watching, if they really sort of sit and sort of meditate on that for themselves, and reflect, you can probably start to see that we've all got similar parts like that. And I know I do. I know I've got a lot of warriors and guards and things around my heart, and there's certain sort of conditions that need to be met on the outside to feel safe enough to allow that part to come up. And it expresses itself in funny ways sometimes. We develop habits to try and create the space for our parts to come through, and sometimes they're not always functional. One thing that showed up for me recently actually is I was making some food for my partner, and for myself and for my partner, and I didn't check with him if he wanted something, and I offered it to him, and he said, "Oh no, I'm full, I've had enough like for today." And I was like, "Oh, I feel rejected by that."
Mhm.
But it wasn't about our love or our relationship or anything, but there was a part of me that was sort of trying to earn love in a way. It was like there was something that I had to do to get that kind of back and forward. So
Yeah.
it's interesting when you start to go, well, what parts were at play there? And there's probably something similar to like the teacher's pet, right?
Yes.
So it's something, it's like if I perform and do
Uh-huh.
the right things, then there'll be love. And so that's all about me. It's nothing to do with him. He just wasn't hungry on that moment. That's the facts
Yeah.
of the situation. But then I had a story, but I thankfully I had the awareness to feel the feeling, but then be like, I see what's going on now.
Mhm.
Because I've also done a little bit of work around my parts. Like, yeah, I'm kind of rejecting myself here. Like I'm setting myself up for this. So it's really fascinating when you start to see how these things play out in your own life, and start to see what's happening, so that you don't then go and project that onto the other person, and then it does become an external friction, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you
Mm,
for sharing that example. I want to add, I don't know if this happens to you, but there's a lot of times for me, what might happen in a moment like that, where I go out of my way to do something that I make up is really supportive or caring or nurturing for Ari, and she might turn it away, is that I feel rejected. I feel the pain of being rejected, and then I might also feel a judgment of myself for feeling rejected. And
mm,
uh, I think that's
yeah,
that might be more of a man thing of like, come on, like fucking toughen up, man. Like, what you're, she just said no to like a small favor for you. Why are you getting all upset about it?
yeah.
Uh, so I wanted to name that.
Yeah, I relate to that too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And so it's interesting, isn't it? Because then you really see it's such a symphony of parts at play there.
Yeah.
Um, and this judging part comes up. Yeah.
There's an element of like unconditional service too. I think the best coaches and space holders, when they give, it's not from a place of wanting anything in return. It's just sincerely feels really good to give. And so it's not only this intimacy actually is not only projected onto Ari, but also my podcast, for example, that a lot of times that hungry ghost is just wanting thousands and thousands of more people to listen to my podcast, when in reality it's actually an invitation for me to just really be proud of myself for this work that I love, that I am really proud of. And there's no amount of recognition out there that can fill that hole in me. Only I can really bring that love to myself. And so this isn't even only about my relationship, and relationships in general are amazing projection screens to look at our stuff, but they actually apply everywhere. They really do.
I think you've nailed it there. It's life is a learning ground, isn't it? And
Yes.
and if we're quiet enough and have enough spaciousness to really stop and reflect on these things, and you can go into analysis paralysis as well, right?
Yes.
But I think it's a valuable exercise to notice when the stimulus and response aren't really kind of matching out. If we look at it with the rational mind, that there's always something to be found, and something that can help sort of lead us to a little bit more freedom there. But I love this conversation of intimacy, of love. It's so interesting. I don't know if I've already said this to you. I don't know that I have. But I consider myself at this point in time to be in what I'm naming an apprenticeship in love. And I'm calling all sort of topics love into my space, and just getting really, really curious about it and trying to understand it at greater depth. And it's fascinating because I'm just seeing it pop up everywhere, and having some really, really rich conversations with clients as well at the moment around love. And whether somebody's in a divorce, or going through parenthood, or there's so many ways that you can start to look at love and really understand it for what it is. And it really is the connective tissue of the human experience. It's I think that's the best kind of description I've come across so far. Like, it just makes everything stick together. I think Esther Perel, so quote something along the lines of that life is about relationships. It's pure and simple. And love, or eros, or whatever poetic word you want to use for it, is really what sticks it all together. So it's a beautiful exploration. I think we've only just touched the surface of it today, but I hope we've kept it sort of practical enough that people can start to see a little bit how they're relating to love, how they're relating to intimacy, and how it might be showing up and causing pleasure and pain, maybe both at once. But yeah, I think curiosity is one of those power tools. And you named compassion, but curiosity and compassion together, I think, are really the sharpest tools in the shed for this one.
Yes. Thank you for holding the space and allowing it to unfold. And I do trust that there's insight and value for other people that are tuned in. And if not, then there certainly was for me.
Yeah, me too. I've enjoyed the conversation. So thanks so much, Mike.
And yeah, thank you. And I think maybe the last thing that I'll name here is that this is what we're talking about. Yes, we only did scratch the surface, and it's a forever unfolding. Like, I'm going to be triggered many times throughout my life, and I will continue to do so as long as I'm alive. And in fact, that's just part of being human. So I wanted to name that.
Yeah, amen to that. Beautifully said. Yes. Thanks so much, Mike. And thank you for everyone tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, man.